State Senator Rick Edmonds is filing some legislation to create an independent school district for the city of St. George. Joining us now to talk about this from the old transition team there, about to be a councilman out that way. We got Drew Murrell in studio. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
No, glad to have you on. Glad to be talking about this.
Absolutely.
I know because
this segment's been 14 years in the making.
Is it 14?
Almost 15 since we started the St. George effort.
11.
No. It's been a while.
Okay. All right. Okay. Then I need to correct everything that I said to start off, because when you talk about a sense of urgency here, what I was saying was if you had a first grader when this started, you're shopping colleges right now. That's not true.
Well, I heard that coming in. And to your point, if you ever listen to Dustin Yates or Patty Cook, two of the people that have been here since the beginning, we absolutely measure time by the ages of our children from the beginning of the process to the end. Like Patty Cook's kids are grown adults.
Right.
They have they're out of the house.
Yeah.
So and they started off and they were in elementary school when this started. So long journey.
So, okay. It's a long journey, and the journey's not going to be over until the school district is formed.
That's
because
right.
that was the initial goal.
That's right.
That was the initial goal. That being said, though, let me play devil's advocate a little bit. You pivoted the goal to form a city. And I know you're forming the city to form the district. I get that. All right. But you pivoted the goal to form the city. Now that you have the city, shouldn't you take a little bit of time to learn how to run a city first?
Well, let's start from that point. We didn't pivot to form a city. We were specifically told if we wanted a school district, go form a city. Now, the problem with that statement was that did drive the organizers to start looking at that process and say, "Ooh, a school district's not the only new thing we need."
Right? No, but that caused the pivot, Drew. You were told you had to form a city. You were told you had to make.
Somebody believes that is part of a school district process. It's not, but that was the belief at the time. And so under that auspice, we go and create the city.
Yes.
Why would we wait any longer? We made promises. And again, going back to Patty Cook and Norman Browning and Dustin Yates and Jim Talbot, this group has been doing this for 14 years. Why would we wait any longer?
Because when the goalpost moved, now you've got a whole other set of responsibilities, and all the residents of St. George, those who have school children and those who don't, are now reliant upon the city of St. George to get it right first.
Yeah, and look, I don't disagree. It's a huge process to create a city. And we've always said, in fact, I've said it for a long time now, that it is a completely separate process. You're going to see a different leadership involved in the school process than you see in the city process. It's a different taxing structure. It's a different leadership group. It's not a mayor. It's a superintendent. All those processes will be separate.
Okay.
But it was important from the city standpoint to show the public, hey, we made you promises. And one of those promises, we were going to get you a school district. And we can do that. We've been fortunate from Senator Bodie White to Senator Rick Edmonds to Representative Emily Chenevert. We've had wonderful leadership with the St. George group and representatives who are ready to bring this forward. The climate has changed in education. Not just in EBR, but the state. We now
how about the nation?
We've got a superintendent for the schools in Dr. Cade Brumley, who is moving us forward in education, being creative. We now have a governor with a much different mindset on education than we suffered through for 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
We now have a local leadership group. We're not working against EBR Parish in this bill. We're going to be working with them to move this forward. It's time for better education for everybody.
What does the new school district, and I know it's early in the conversation, but with everything possibly on the table, what will the new school district look like? What schools would be moving from EBR? What schools might be coming around that would be new?
Well, so you look at a standpoint of when you get schools is such a wide category now, because it's not just your public schools, but also your private schools and your charter schools are involved in that process. So first and foremost, the boundaries of this school district will be coterminous with the city of St. George. Those are the boundaries for St. George, the city. They'll be the same boundaries for the school system. So that's very
coterminous a vocabulary word they'll be taught in St. George School District?
Well, I mean, with the high level of education, if we're as successful as our neighbors at creating school districts, then probably that'll be an elementary vocabulary term.
Yeah, that's like a 750 SAT word right there. All right, I distracted you. My apologies. Go dive back in.
So then you look at what does the school district look like, and what we believe is it whatever you categorize it or call it, from private, public, and charter, what's important is good. There is good in all three of those categories, and there is bad in all three of those categories. So what's important from the St. George standpoint, and I believe the EBR parish standpoint now, is that we develop good schools, hold schools accountable, and eliminate bad schools, and do something different with those instead of allowing them to persist for decades. Let's do something different. I think that's what you're looking at. If you're in the boundaries of St. George, you're going to be able to pick the school that you want that's best for your child in St. George.
Okay.
And you're not going to be stuck in a failing school system. And that's going to force and require these three categories of schools to compete and provide options that the people want, as opposed to you're stuck going to that school because.
We're talking with Drew Murrell. He's on the transition team for the city of St. George. He's also, are you physically on the ballot on March 29th just by yourself?
No.
It's just done.
Yep.
All right.
I'll be sworn in July 1st.
Future councilman.
Thank you.
Drew Murrell with us, talking about the proposed school district, independent school district for the city of St. George. So the legislation that's being put out there, walk us through a timeline of, let's do quick as possible, then, plan B if quick as possible doesn't happen.
Well, so when this bill passes, and I believe that's going to happen, you're looking at a statewide ballot in November of this year. And that would be to create the constitutional amendment, or approve the constitutional amendment that officially creates the school district. The language of the bill you'll see probably sometime early April.
Okay.
It'll be comprehensive. And this is something we're working with EBR Parish on. Senator Edmonds is talking with EBR Parish to make sure that we create a bill that not only creates the St. George Community School District, but also helps EBR and addresses their concerns and issues regarding everything from liability to assets to the physical structures. All those things are going to be a discussion and a cooperative endeavor with EBR Parish, including some school options that if you're in St. George, you'll be able to enjoy in EBR Parish. So you're not necessarily going to lose that option either.
Wait, walk me down that path.
Well, for example, in the beginning, in the 2013 school bill that we passed that created the Southeast EBR Parish Community School District, there was language in there that said if your child was in high school at a magnet program, they could matriculate and finish in that magnet program.
Okay.
Central had offered the same thing, but the EBR Parish school leadership at the time had said, no, we're not going to allow that.
Okay.
But now the changes in education are making this much more realistic and viable. And not only would it be your high school kid, if your child has started school in EBR Parish, they would be able to matriculate through the EBR school system.
So even their first graders.
Well, I mean, because there's, because that was one of the concerns. As soon as we said your child can finish high school at Baton Rouge High, somebody goes, well, their sister is in middle school at Southeast Middle or whatever, Sherwood Middle Magnet or Flame or whatever.
Right.
What about them?
Right.
Fine. We want you to get the best education possible, and this bill is going to make it possible. We're not here to hurt your child. We're just here to help all the other children as well.
Right. How you pay for it?
Well, I mean, the same way schools are always paid for. There's MFP dollars out there. There's state and federal funding. It's not going to be any different than before. I believe the last time I saw an analysis of the St. George School District was back right before the election of 2019. It said the St. George school system would probably have the third most money of any school system in the state. So that's probably a good way to start. And I think if you look, it's what the success of our neighbors has shown us is the amount per child is not directly attributable to the success of that child. If you look at EBR Parish and what they spend per kid, it's thousands more than what they're spending in Central and some of our neighboring areas.
Yeah.
So the dollars per child aren't necessarily what matters. And I think some of the other things you're seeing from a statewide standpoint that will affect St. George, money follows the child. It's starting. It'll be underway by the time we get our school district started. Your money is going to go with you. So yes, education is a fundamental right, but that doesn't mean they get to dictate where that right occurs. And money follows the child is going to mean that you can go to public, private, charter, and your money will go with you. And that makes a lot of sense.
I want to go back to if everything goes to plan, the quickest this thing rolls out.
So you got a constitutional amendment end of November that'll be on the ballot for that, pass that, and then you're back looking at the taxing mechanism portion of it, which would ultimately result in an EBR Parish vote. So you're looking sometime 2026.
Okay.
Realistic.
The 26 to 27 school year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That'd be realistic.
This would have to be would have to coincide with the school year. You're not going to change to a district mid-year.
That's right. So you got a couple of things. You've got a school calendar that you really don't want to upset in the middle of it. It wouldn't make sense for either party to do that.
Right.
Then you've got to have that cooperative endeavor agreement with EBR Parish to set all those parameters. So instead of us fighting each other like we've been doing for a long time now, this really truly will be a partnership moving forward.
We got Drew Murrell in with us from the city of St. George, part of the transition team, and no surprise in that they got their city, and now they're going back looking for the school district that they had originally intended to go after. Let's talk politics.
Okay.
Because this is going to involve a 2/3 vote within the state legislature, and then if I'm not mistaken, a statewide vote of the people.
That's correct. That's part of the constitutional amendment process.
Yes. So yeah, exactly. When y'all voted for your city, it was within the city limits.
Correct.
Okay, this is different now. How do you make the rest of the state care?
Well, I think from the standpoint, if you're similar to St. George, and we get calls from a lot of places that would like to follow the St. George process and incorporate.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're one of those areas, then you absolutely need to see us be successful because we're a roadmap for your future.
Okay.
I think if you're from another area and you see a group that wants to form their own school system, why would you get in the way of that? To that point, I don't really see a lot of resistance. And I think from the standpoint of legislative representatives, it's a local bill. It's a group of people who've done everything they've been told to do legally for a long period of time now. And this is the final part of the process, and they're all well aware of it. I mean, you can't avoid St. George in Louisiana, and I don't think it's going to affect us at the ballot box.
Yeah, the local bill part is actually the part that kind of gives me pause here. Because, there's going to be a machine stacked up against you for sure.
I don't know. Honestly, no. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think that the dynamics of the school system in St. George have changed, and now everyone's looking at the best path forward.
Okay.
Instead of trying to, look, we've had a change in EBR Parish administrative leadership that's changed that mindset. On the state level, we've got a change in governor. That's changed that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we're running into walls anymore. I think we're opening doors.
We got about a minute left with Drew Murrell from the city of St. George. Talk about the bills that will be the bills that haven't been drafted yet, but the bills that will be in this legislative session that would aim to form a St. George independent school district. As far as those that would live within St. George, those that are already on board with this, messaging is going to be important as well, not just with the public later on, but throughout this legislative session. How do you get the ground game going here?
Well, that's from the standpoint of, again, if we're cooperating and we have an agreement in place with EBR Parish, I think that's a great step. It shows everyone that we're on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the provisions talking about, who would be upset about having a St. George school system? Who's going to be upset in St. George?
In St. George?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Exactly.
Nobody. And that's where we come
from
back
the parish standpoint. You have to look at EBR Parish having to close a bunch of schools due to declining enrollment and population. Mm-hmm. And we're willing to take 7 of those off your hands. So they're able to consolidate their students into their schools without having to close additional schools. So I think we're helping keep their facilities open. I think it's a partnership.
He is Drew Murrell with the city of St. George. We always appreciate the time.
Thank you, Brian.